Riley, thank you very much for being a part of the show. So I want to start with this, and thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it. We do. What does it mean when you are the starting quarterback at a university, at a program like BYU that has had so many great quarterbacks?
It means, well, for the kid individually, or for myself individually at least, it was a dream come true, and really the validation of a lot of hard work. Listen, well, am I a college football Hall of Famer like Mark Wilson and Steve Young and Ty Detmer and Jim McMahon? No. Like, was I a Heisman Trophy either winner or finalist like a handful of guys? Neither. But I still, when I earned the right to be able to put my name up as guys who have represented BYU as the starting quarterback, and our teams did marginally well. Again, no national championship like Robbie Bosco and them were able to pull off in 1984, but we held our own, a couple of double-digit win seasons, and a lot of that, it means for you as a kid that that all that hard work that you put in is great. And now the other aspect of it is when you're actually in it, it means that actually at this time when I was a quarterback at BYU, they told me that the most highly visible athletes, and actually while I was there, the Jazz were down. But normally it's like whoever's best on the Jazz, right? Right. Where Donovan Mitchell, or it was Karl Malone, and then after that in the state of Utah, it is the quarterback at BYU. So locally out here in our little region, our little state, you are the number one, number two sports celebrity in this market. And so that everything that goes along for that, you go out to eat, people want to stop you, ask for your autograph, take pictures, you go shopping, you try and spend a quiet day at the lake with your family, and people are coming up to you. But all that's part of doing business, because that's what you spend all those hours for as a young kid, working towards that ultimate goal. And so it's all part of it, but it does carry with it a certain level of pressure, but it's a welcomed pressure, because you get to represent the Y and sling the rock, rock together in a great line of quarterbacks.
Well, you have three guys at BYU right now vying for that job in camp. None of the three thought they were going to be doing that thing 6 weeks ago. That they were going to go in, and camp was going to be, let's see who can be the backup. I want to see how much better I can get, so that when Jake Retzlaff graduates, I'm going to be the next in line. That was the goal. Now that timeline has moved up. How much does that change your mentality going in when you start from a position of, I'm not going to be the starter, to, oh, I might be the starter? I've got to ratchet this up a notch.
You would hope not very much. And I'll speak to my personal experience. When I entered the program, I was my first year at BYU, which was actually my sophomore year because I went on a mission. I will put that aside. But my first year at BYU, Max Hall was the starter. He was going into his senior season. Max Hall, from 2007, so 2008 and 7, 8, and 9, became the winningest quarterback. No one won more games as quarterback than Max Hall at BYU. We won 39 games. But going into that senior season, which, by the way, Max started and played every game, and we won 11-2. But in my mind, I was competing with Max. Nobody else's mind I was. In other words, I guess what I'm saying is I hope it doesn't change those individual players' mindsets too much, because I would hope they'd already have the pedal down and we're competing for Jake. And while not vocally or not externally we're vying to take his job, but internally, that's what I was doing. And it really helped prepare me for the next year when I did find myself in a quarterback competition. And then 2 years later when I found myself in another one, right? And so I would hope that for those guys, not much changed in their day-to-day. Now, for a program and for an offense, it's big, because the other 10 guys in the offense and maybe the defense are kind of put it on autopilot. And they're like, all right, we don't have to worry about the signal caller. We don't have to worry about who's handling the leadership. We don't have to worry about, that guy knowing what he's doing from week to week. We've got an established guy with, 16 starts under his belt there. And all of a sudden, so it's much more of a change for the other 10 guys on offense and then the other guys throughout the locker room. At least hopefully it would be than it is for those quarterbacks, because in their minds, those quarterbacks were already competing for a starting quarterback job, even though there wasn't an open quarterback competition.
Is it also like, for example, you go to BYU because of their history? You mentioned Max Hall, Detmer, among others, and Gifford Nielsen, Steve Young. So many. Heck, Steve Sarkisian was there, the head coach at Texas. And I could go on and on and on because there's that many. So if you go play quarterback at BYU, you're pretty good in the first place, right?
Yeah, and what's so interesting is all three of these dudes are transfers, and I guess that just speaks more to the environment of college football. You'd think that BYU coming out of high school, the quarterbacks would be, begging, vying for the opportunity to come and play in such a storied and hallowed program, and yet here we picked up a kid from Western Michigan, a kid from Utah State, and a kid from Stanford, right? Even though Bachmeier played there, but he was enrolled there, so. So you'd think that more kids would be clamoring, but also it's the nature of college football that you have to go and find the best player, and with the ease of player mobility and all of those things. But each one of these guys can play in their own right. I'll if you want me to go in depth, but I'll save it because I'll save my in-depth analysis and pros and cons of each of those players unless you guys want it. But the interesting thing about these three is it's definitely not homogenous. Like, they have very distinct skill sets and very distinct strengths. So it will be very interesting to see which one rises to the top, because each one of them, I think the offense will look significantly different under each one because of what they bring to the table.
Last year Jake didn't win until the week of. It was announced then that he'd beaten out Gerry Bohanon, and that was gonna be the starter. And then when you hear that, you're like, well, Gerry Bohanon's probably gonna wind up starting some games, given that it came down to this point. And then Jake played really well. This was a team that fantastic on defense and all of those things, and they were able to navigate that. You don't want to have to do that twice, but it looks like they're going to have to. How much does Kalani Sitake's even-keeled and compassionate attitude kind of help with that, as opposed to maybe – there are coaches that are really successful that would not have handled that well because they're too keyed up.
Yeah, so you talk about compassionate. And I don't think I'm out in anything. I think Coach has admitted this. If you follow BYU, and when I was on the radio call and all of that, he would admit as much in postgame. It feels, because of the way he is so even keel, he is so mild mannered or mild tempered when he's talking with the media and when he's at media days and all of those things. But make no mistake, that dude has extremely high expectations and holds everybody to those expectations in an undeviating manner. So he's extremely demanding. He's not demanding in that he'll dress you down in front of the team. It's actually more of a kind of a quiet demanding, in that he makes clear what the expectation is. And if you don't meet it, there's no warning. There's no chewing you out. There's no screaming. It's simply, go grab a seat on the bench, son. You weren't meeting expectation, and the next guy gets his chance. So that's how Kalani Sitake's everybody works, because so many people ask me that question. Like, Kalani seems like such a nice guy. How does he compete in the cutthroat world of college football? It's like, he is a nice guy, I guess what I say, he's figured out how to do that without ever attacking the person. And he does that via expectations and a culture of excellence that he holds every player to. And by the way, he does it at a program level, but each one of his assistant coaches do that. And so Jake was able to, I think, meet that standard well enough throughout the season in the quarterback room last year, to where they didn't have to go. But make no mistake, had Jake's performance been hurting the team's chances to win on the field on Saturdays last year, they would have done just like they would have at any other position. And especially if they believed that Bohanon had given them a better chance to win, we would have seen quarterbacks swapped out. But Jake was lucky enough to keep, his head above water, so to speak, when it comes to those demanding expectations.
Do you think, because that was always simmering, even though BYU, I think they had their spring earlier than normal, than a lot of programs did, these are all transfers like you mentioned. Could they have planned that this might be the case by the time they got to summer?
Yeah, that's a good question. And timelines and everything are foggy as far as flow of information from the time the civil suit actually dropped and all of those things. And so but that's outside of my pay grade. I'm not close enough to the program to be able to speak on that. But you'd hope, I guess the one thing that you would say is that, and it pains me to say this, but I truly believe it, and so I got to use it. But the majority of this Utah staff built and was part of that great run and that rise of the Utah football program when they entered the Pac-12. And the Utah football program was able to have whatever success they did in the Pac-12 through player development. And so my answer to your question is, I would hope that their just foundational approach to player development would have prepared these guys as best they could, so that when something comes completely out of left field like this has, that they aren't left completely, desperately looking for something, that rather those players, there was adequate time, strategy, and thought given to each of these three guys during spring so that they were being developed. Maybe not developed as the starter, but developed as football players overall. In the event that one of them was needed, they could step in and do their job. So I know and trust it was done at a program level standpoint, but individually, I don't know that there's any, at least from what I know of how this whole thing went down, it feels completely out of left field to me. I don't think there's anything differently that they could have done other than they have done and do right now, which is put these guys through the absolute refiner's fire and hope that whoever emerges on the other side is good enough to help this team accomplish its goals.
They have a really good roster around whoever the quarterback's going to be. I mean, their defense is really good. Their running game, you think, is going to be pretty good. The receivers have all been good. I mean, and they have this knack of kind of getting these guys that, like, out of nowhere that you've never heard of, like Cody Epps and Puka Nacua. I mean, like, and then they just kind of show up. What is it developmentally? I know a lot of people say, well, the guys are older, but most people have been through the mission like you. So it's not an advantage at all, because if you get to work out at all on a mission, like you might be in Boston, Massachusetts, or you might be in Rwanda or something like that. You can be in a lot of different places. So you don't have that. What is it that allows them to develop so well?
And yeah, that's a great point that you bring up about the mission. And listen, I'll listen to anybody that will say it's an advantage emotionally and psychologically, but anybody that wants to say it's an advantage mentally, that wants to say it's an advantage physically, and that, your bodies are that much more mature and this and that, that is a complete and utter wash. But you talk about how are they so much able to develop these guys. Being developed as a football player is tough, especially if you do it in a program with a lot of other good players, because inevitably you're going to face disappointment, you're going to face adversity, things aren't going to bounce your way. The thing that a mission might teach you is to be a little bit more resilient. It'll teach you that, listen, not every day is popcorn and candy. Like, sometimes you pick up your lunch pail and you got to go to work, and that mission experience teaches you a lot of that. I mean, like, guys, a lot of people out there, like, voluntarily asking to join religion and sign up for all of the stuff that being religious entails. It's not a product that a lot of people out there in the world are buying these days, yet guys sacrifice 2 years. And so in order to do that, and not just suffer through that, not just endure it, but rather in order to make that a positive and productive experience in your life, you develop those traits of resiliency and dedication and hard work. And then when you bring those back and apply them to football, I think that increases BYU's pool. They have more players with those attributes more developed, which is how they end up getting more developed football players, because they have less guys that, let's say, get offended by a coach and decide to transfer out of the program. Or they have less guys that say, well, this position coach has it against me, I'm going to go, rather than playing safety, I'm going to go try and play outside linebacker. Now you have a guy that was a promising safety who's now undersized at backer, and he's positioned wrong on the field, right? You've got guys that are less inclined to cut bait and run, and more guys who are willing to, like, dig in and see it through. I would accept that guys can attribute that to the mission experience, but then also, and I know Kalani's talked a lot about this at media days and others, but that's also a significant requirement of just guys of the traits that they look for in guys coming out of high school is do they have those things? When I heard the lengths that BYU goes to in talking to not just their coach, but like their coaches it's almost like private eye type stuff, going around talking to teachers, talking to administrators, talking to neighbors, talking to members in the community, all trying to make sure that this kid has the accurate makeup of traits. I think those are the type of things that lend itself to BYU being a really good proving ground for football development.
All right, so they have three young men that are getting the snaps and reps: Hillstead, Bachmeier, and Bourguet. Can you feel comfortable? I know you're comfortable enough, but to kind of give us a read on each one of them, whether it's the strengths or maybe things they got to get better at.
Hillstead, I'll start with him because at least recent reports from yesterday's practice, which had an extended media availability, is that it looks like he might be the early leader, 6 practices through. Yesterday was practice number 6 in fall camp. He spins it the best by far. He was a state championship winning passer here in Utah. He played for a school called Skyridge. Our perennial powerhouse is Corner Canyon. He beat Corner Canyon and threw for, I think, 385. It still was like, I think it's the most passing yards that Corner Canyon's ever given up in a state playoff game. And so the dude just spins it. He's got a knack for anticipation. Even for being a little guy, he's got enough arm strength to be able to, drive the ball when he needs to, put some pace on the ball when he needs to, put some touch. Put some touch and air under it. So, like, he's got all that. His problem is, contrary to whatever he's listed at, that dude is 5'9", and in my estimation, maybe 190 pounds. And he's not a naturally thick guy. You look at his skeletal build. You go back and look at him in high school. He's probably more of a basketball build than he is, like, say, maybe a wrestler build type, right? So the biggest knock on, I think, why Hillstead hasn't won the job already, because Roderick's looking for a skilled passer who's going to make great decisions, right? So it's like, well, why haven't they handed over to Hillstead? Guys, in today's P4 environment, in today's Big 12, what's the probability that you give a 5'9", 185-pound kid of lasting all 12 games? So it's hard to give the keys of the car over to the guy that, could blow a tire in mile 1. Now, that could happen with anybody. No one knows better than BYU, who had Taysom Hill for 4 seasons and 3 season-ending injuries. That doesn't matter how big a freak you are. Football is a brutal sport that, where injuries are inevitable. You just hope that luck balances your way. Bourguet is probably like their most well-rounded quarterback, and that he's got more mobility than Hillstead, and he throws it well enough, but still he's got a little bit of a long release, and he struggles at times with decision-making. He gets caught getting the ball out a little bit late, and that can lead itself to turnovers, which is going to be a big no-no in Roderick's offense. And then you got Bachmeier, who, of all the guys, like, he looks the part. He's the dude coming off the bus that you're like, man, his muscular development is there, his movement development is there, but this guy's never taken what he doesn't have that the other 2 guys have is they've started games and taken snaps at the Division I football level, and Bachmeier hasn't. So for all intents and even though he did have the 1 year, he had the Stanford enrollment, he didn't see any live bullets, and so he's still a complete unknown. And so that's like, why don't you give the keys to the car to that guy? Well, we're not exactly sure how he drives it. So that's kind of the lay of the land there. I tend to think that Hillstead's going to get the first chance of this thing, simply because as you lay their attributes out on the table, and if you're not, he cannot control his size, right?
Right.
You lay their attributes out on the table. They're really close in a lot of areas, except when you come to passing ability and accuracy. I think McKay Hillstead has a significant step on the other 2. And at the end of the day, that's what you want your quarterback to do. Is it nice to have a quarterback who can run? Yeah. And is it nice to have a quarterback who's big and resilient and take hits? But what are all those old linemen for, if not to protect him, right? What are all those running backs you got, if not to go get those hard yards between the tackles? You shouldn't be asking your quarterback in a primary role to go do those things for you. In this offense under Aaron Roderick, the primary role that you're asking your quarterback to play is make good decisions to take care of the football and deliver the ball accurately, so that it's a weapon for the offense. So given all those things, I think the nod at the end of all this goes to Hillstead, but I can see it going to the others as well.
Yeah, when the story first came down that he was going to be gone, that I saw Hillstead probably more often than anybody else was who the analyst or those who were covering the story, not just from the BYU perspective and media, that he would probably be the guy initially, but they would have options if that did not work out. That seems like what you're saying too.
Yeah. And look, guys, it's not all about size, but so I met Noah Fifita who's a starter at Arizona, right? Another Big Ten quarterback. And first of all, Noah's a solid 5'10". He might even be able to get away with 5'11" on a good day. But Noah was always like a thick kid. Like, he's got between his belly button and his knees, he's thick. He was always built that way. So it's almost more of a not Kyler Murray, but maybe more towards a Kyler Murray type build. I don't know. Maybe you guys, you're covering the sport, you're covering the conference. A slight build 5'9" guys, you just don't see him. And so you kind of got to ask yourself, what does he got to do? What does he got to prove to be able to trust that guy? And I don't know that there's a reasonable threshold to do that.